You're very welcome. My name is Caroline Murphy, and I'm delighted to be back with you again. We're a big gathering. There are over 160 of us here in the room. And I think it is fair to say that we have at least one thing in common. Each and every one of us here today believes passionately that sport matters. Whatever our role, whatever brought us here, today we are at one in that belief.
Because we're passionate, and it's an element of passion, it's an element of community. It gives a sense of togetherness. We like to be part of the community. We're a group nation, we're sociable, we're not individuals, and sport unites us incredibly.
It helps with social inclusion, it helps with health, combats obesity, and really it's about having fun as well.
People aren't necessarily aware of the good that sport can actually achieve in the country as a whole.
Sport matters because, you know, as a small nation on the edge of Europe, we're getting battered left, right and centre in the world. Sports, the one area where the whole country can come together and get behind our elite athletes in particular.
I think it helps people to mix and make friends and really socialise. And on a national stage, it gives us something to be proud of and something to fight for.
Yes, a few different answers were offered. They were at this conference 2 years ago when the question was posed. And today, as we look to the future of Irish sport, we're going to address that question again. Before we do that, though, I would like to introduce you to a few people. First of all, to your host for the day, the new chairman of the Federation of Irish Sport. That's David Williams. David takes up the reins from the FAI's Sarah O'Shea, who did a fantastic job. Now, David previously served as chair of Cricket Ireland from 2007 to 2013. He makes up for a lifetime of working in insurance by maintaining, I'm told, a childlike dedication to all sport, whether it's live or on TV. So, David, you're very welcome.
Thank you very much, everybody. It's great to see over 160 people in attendance, and of course we're honoured by the presence of the Minister for Transport, Tourism and Sport, Mr. Paschal Donohoe, Tom O'Mahony and Donna Morgan, and their colleagues from the Department of Sport, and also happy to welcome their colleagues from the Department of Health and Education and the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform. My old friend John Tracy from the Irish Sports Council, David Conway from the National Sports Campus, and the Federation's own commercial partners and supporters, for whom we're very grateful for the support they give us throughout the year and for this function in particular. And also, I think it's appropriate that we welcome especially our President, Bernard Brogan, and who is so very free with his time and has done so much to promote the interests, Bernard, so you're especially welcome also. The composition of this room is reflective of the various elements that are required to work and collaborate to ensure that Irish sport and the positive impact that it can have on all our lives are as good as they can possibly be. We look forward greatly to hearing from the Minister, to canvassing the view and ideas of all of those present about the work of the Federation and indeed how we can be better. And we hope that we will all walk away from today just a little bit wiser than we came in. So it's great to see the level of support that we have today, and I'm very grateful that you have all given up your time to come here. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, David. Now, I know we showed you a few short answers already to that question, why does sport matter? But I really want to bring it centre stage again, because it is the question which is going to drive much of what we talk about today. What we're wondering is, if you or I, or anyone else who cares about sport, was probed about that belief, that sport absolutely does matter, what would we say? I know I would probably say, well, it matters because it gave me a career as a broadcaster, as a journalist. It was sport that provided me with my material, my stories, my programmes. So that's probably why it matters so much to me. But what about you? What would your answer be, straight off the top of your heads? Would you produce as many different answers as you are people in the room? All perfectly valid, but still different. Would you say, well, I can tell you why my sport matters. We've this number of children out playing every weekend, and we whatever. Would you perhaps be best boys and girls in the class, and as brilliant paid-up members of the Federation of Irish Sport, would you say immediately, I'll tell you why sport matters, because its contribution to Ireland is huge, it contributes over 5 main areas, and this is by how much? Or would you be somewhere in the middle? Would you answer the question by perhaps drawing on a mixture of personal opinion and experience, as well as some of the amazing statistics and information that the Federation has been putting together to make your joint case over the past few years? Now, I'm not asking the question because I have what I believe is the right answer. I'm asking it because the Federation of Irish Sport needs your answer to that question, and that's what today is all about. Because over the past few years, the Federation has been talking to you, listening to you, and speaking for you. And today, they really do want to check out whether or not you are fully aware of what they've been saying, whether you agree with it, and whether you think they should change what they say in any way. Because it is a good time to get a message right. In fact, we would go so far as to say it is a vital time to get a message right. The country is turning a bit of a corner economically, but it's also turning into a few big-ticket situations in which sport is heavily involved. And that involvement does raise questions of emphasis. For example, there are Olympic Games coming up. So should we be saying sport's about medals? There's a Rugby World Cup bid on the horizon. Should we be saying sport's all about the economy? There's talk of an obesity epidemic. Should we be saying sport's all about health and participation? And of course, there's an election coming up. So should we be saying, we've got to get sport on the political agenda? See, those are just some of the things we're hoping you will all talk about this afternoon, both to each other and to us. You'll also hear from a man who is himself one of our best talkers, that's Kingsley Aiken. He's going to give us a workshop on one of the most important skills of all, which is networking. So basically, what we're going to do is we're going to spend a fair bit of time clarifying what we should say, and then Kingsley is going to tell us about how to find the right people to say it to. We think it makes for a pretty well-balanced afternoon. We hope you do too. But before we do any of that, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker. We really are delighted to have our minister with us today. We know how difficult it is to find time in a government minister's schedule, especially in the schedule of a minister whose portfolio is as broad as is the case with transport, tourism and sport. So we are really grateful to Minister Paschal Donohoe for making the time to join us, to speak to us, and also, by the way, to stay with us while we discuss the future of Irish sport. We take it as a compliment and also as an indication that he, his advisors, and his department believe that sport really does matter. Minister Donohoe.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you all this afternoon and to see so many people here and so many organisations represented at what I know will be an important afternoon. I want to begin my own few words, actually, by directly answering the question there, why does sport matter? And I had a very good illustration of why sport matters, both to me, to communities, and I believe the country, when I attended yesterday afternoon the FAI Junior Cup final, which took place in the Aviva Stadium. And it was a fantastically entertaining game. It was a game between Liffey Wanderers and Sheriff Youth. Liffey Wanderers were up 1-0, and there was an equaliser in the very last minute, and the game then went to extra time. But the reason why it illustrated to me about why sport matters is actually about what happened before the game as opposed to what happened during the game. Because what happened before the game is both of the communities that were involved in supporting and from whom the two clubs originated. Both of them met in, I think it was the Samuel Beckett Bridge yesterday afternoon, and they had a joint tug of war before the game happened. And then all of the communities walked together up to the stadium to support both of their clubs. And it illustrates very well to me why sport matters, because of course sport at its best, it asks people or teams to stand apart in the spirit of competition, in the spirit of each other trying to do their best. But of course the great consequence of all that is that it also brings people together, either on the pitch, in the club, or as I saw yesterday, in the arena, when people are spectating and they're watching the sport and they were getting ready for the afternoon. And that's analogy, if you want, or that symbol of what happened before the game and not just what happened in the game, for me is the best illustration to me personally of why sport matters and why the government are looking to support it in the way we are. And I'm joined here this afternoon by a colleague of mine in the Oireachtas, Deputy John O'Mahony, who, as chairman of an Oireachtas committee, and then before he became a TD, and when he was a TD, of course knows a huge amount through his coaching endeavours about why sport matters, and brings those insights into bear into the Oireachtas. And I'm also, and even though I'm not joined by him this afternoon, he's always here with me in spirit, Minister of State Michael Ring is a man who kind of sums up, really, the kind of energy and enthusiasm that he has for sport, and who was Minister of State for Sport, day in, day out, within our department, looks to champion the agenda and looks to make sure that it is well represented as it can be within what is a broad department. So look, in the time that's available to me here this afternoon, I wanted to give an account of what has happened since we last met, and I want to, in so doing, really thank Sarah and everybody in your federation for the opportunity to be here and to address you. I have to say, in one of the opening comments, the question was put to look at how the federation is putting your case forward. And I have to say they do a brilliant job in relation to that. Sarah and all of her team do an exceptionally professional job in representing the agenda of Irish sport within my department and impressing it with the kind of the right mix of enthusiasm and awareness of the broader agenda that my department has. And I really want to commend them for the excellent work that they do in relation to that. So what's happened since then? We have the Sports Ireland Act is now enacted. We've had, since we last met, a new round of the Sports Capital Programme. And as a new minister, when I was going into the budgetary negotiations with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform and the Department of Finance, one of the very top priorities that I had, with the active support of Michael Ring, was to secure support for a further round of Sports Capital Programme funding. And the very reason we wanted to do that wasn't just because of the huge awareness that I and Michael have of the social, of the health, of the inclusion benefits that sports capital funding delivers. But it was also because of all the figures that are up here. Because we know that money that's invested in sport and in capital in sport is money that's very well invested. We've had very good progress in the National Sports Campus since we last met. And I know David is here and other members of the team are here from National Sports Campus. And we have a National Physical Activity Plan that's going to be published very shortly. And then before I move into what's to come, let me also make some comments about where we are in relation to funding for sport. And I heard earlier on all the different ways in which sport can be approached and the ways in which it can be positioned. But let me say, coming into the year to come, that and I'm sure it's the case for John as well, we spend all of our days dealing with groups and with agendas that frequently put their case forward in terms of votes. In terms of, if you do this, votes can be gained. If you do this, votes can be lost. And I have to tell you, the breadth of the agenda that sport has to offer, the inclusivity, how positive it is, and how it hooks into all that Ireland is great about and that all Ireland is positive about, does say to me that the anchoring of your own agenda can be and is far broader than its importance within the political arena, because it touches into so many different arenas that take place in the length and breadth of our country every day and every weekend. And this is evidenced in where you are in the support that you've got out of my department in recent years. The total amount of funding that will be available to invest in sport for this calendar year will be €114 million. Look at how all of this has been invested, for example, in the Sports Capital Programme. Myself and Michael were very pleased to be able to announce a round of funding of €40.5 million under the 2014 programme. And the latest programme that we have announced that is now fully online is for €40 million worth of funding, looking for good and strong bids to come in relation to this. And as I speak, 1,600 applications have now come in for a process that is all now done online, that has a huge amount of engagement. And as I get to this point, I want to acknowledge and thank all of my officials who are here today, who are so passionate about this part of my own department and look to support it every day. So we have a further round of sports capital funding, which has been very actively engaged in and applied for. And as the year goes on, we look forward to making lots of very positive decisions in relation to that. So let's look at the year ahead. What are the various priorities that we'll be working hard on and that will be getting my time? I want to here prioritise 5 of them. First, increasing participation in sport. Second, the development of the National Sports Campus. Third, the success of the Sports Ireland body, the new body that we have now just legislated for. Fourth, various strategies that we will be launching in relation to the physical activity plan and a national sports policy. And fifth, I want to conclude with how this area intersects so strongly with other areas which I'm responsible for. So let me begin with participation in sport. This is an area that I feel so strongly about it. And I want to explain the support that I have for it with kind of offering my own personal perspective on it. And my own personal perspective in it begins in my secondary school. And I'm delighted that Bernard Brogan is here this afternoon, a man who does an extraordinary amount in representing sport in this organisation. And what I do not share at all with Bernard or with his family is any degree of sporting prowess, I have to say. But what I do share with him is the fact that we both went to the same secondary school, St. Declan's CBS in the Neffen Road in Cabra. And when I went to that school, it offered me the first experience that I had with the organisation of sport. And I had then a PE teacher called Mr. McLaughlin, who was from Donehoe and an extraordinary teacher of sport. And I had then, and it's thank God something I've shaken off since then, I had chronic asthma. So I couldn't really participate in any kind of sporting activity in the way all of you can, to the excellence that many of you have. And where that came to light for me every year was in a thing called doing the bogies, right? And what the bogies was a park that is in the middle of the community that I live in and represent, the John Paul Park in Cabra. And what we had to do each year was do 2 laps of the John Paul Park. And this was something that for me was just a nut that I could never crack. And we used to do it every year. And each year I could never quite finish it off. I had to bring in the rest of it, I had to walk in towards the end of it. And in the final year in which we were doing it, at the start of 6th year, we had to get ready for the Leaving Cert and had to focus in on getting ready for that. I said, if I don't do anything else, I'm going to finish off the bogies. I'm going to do it. Don't care what else happens to me, I'm going to finish it off. And the John Paul Park is, it's as I've described, it's a park, and the last part of it is slightly occluded by some trees. So I set off to do it. First lap, I ran it all. Second lap, I was still running, but my God, it was hard going. But I was going to keep on running. I don't know if Forrest Gump had actually been made then, but if it had been, the words of "Run, Forrest, run" were echoing in my ears. And I got to the final part of it. Of course, I was on my own by that stage. Everybody else had already finished it. And of course, I couldn't see the finishing line because it was out of my view to the trees, due to the trees that were there. And just as I got around it, what Mr. McLaughlin had done is he'd lined up the rest of the class to cheer me in. And as I got in, I did so to the cheers of the rest of my class. And it's an image that stuck with me since then. Not only, of course, about the value, which we all know, of our teachers and how they look to include everybody, but it summed up for me what's most important to me now as Minister for Sport, which is the phenomenal importance of inclusion, of making sure that everybody, regardless of their degree of excellence or even their degree of attitude at times, that there's a place for them in a club, in a sport, in a pitch, or wherever it is. And it's something that in my different times and different opportunities that I've had to engage with sport over the last number of months, it's something that I've really wanted to stress. Because, of course, from inclusion, ultimately also comes excellence. Because by getting as many people in and giving them the coach and support that they get, you get to the other part of that equation, which is identifying those men and women who are excellent and who can even be more excellent and who need the support to do that. And I'm very glad to see that the important work in that area is paying off. That participation in sport in Ireland in 2011 stood at just under 45%. In 2013, at just over 47%. We now have 1.7 million Irish adults participating in sport all of the time. I'm particularly pleased to see that the gender gap in sport is continuing to close, with the Irish Sports Council Women in Sport programme celebrating its 10th anniversary. And I had the opportunity to see very recently just how valuable and important that programme is. I went out along with my family to support the Irish women's rugby team out in Ashburn, and I saw the huge excellence that they delivered in representing our country, which of course paid off in further success for them on the sporting field, and of course has now led, due to the great efforts of our colleagues in the IRFU, to Ireland hosting the Women's Rugby World Cup very, very soon. And I've received a lot of feedback in my day-to-day contact with different sporting organisations in relation to the importance of inclusion. I saw another aspect of inclusion very recently, where a number of weeks ago I had the opportunity to attend, and I want to mention this in the week that's in us, the 10th anniversary of Ireland's only gay soccer club, the Dublin Devils, where they invited me along to speak at a dinner they were organising to mark the success of their club. And they gave me another very important insight into all the dimensions of inclusivity and the huge contribution that sport makes to bringing inclusivity alive and making everybody feel valued and that they have a place. Of course, another organisation that has played a very important role in that work is the Irish Sports Council. They have played a hugely pivotal role in the development of sports at all levels. Last year was another outstanding year for Irish sport, with 55 medals achieved at world and European events. And I look forward to seeing many other great successes during the coming year and beyond. And the breadth of that agenda was brought home to me a number of months ago, where one Saturday afternoon I went out to the badminton centre in Baldoyle. Of course, I met John there. I meet him at many weekends and different events that I go along. And I think it was the Carlton Irish Open that was taking place there. I think that was it, John. And the abiding memory that I have of walking into the badminton centre there in Baldoyle, I wasn't just seeing all of our athletes and seeing how well they were doing, but when I walked in, seeing all of the flags for all of the different countries displayed all across the perimeter of that centre, and all of the different countries and teams that had travelled to Ireland for that weekend to participate in the Carlton Irish Open. And it brought home to me the work that, of course, takes place in Irish badminton, the support that it gets through the Sports Council, but of course also how valued that work is in allowing other countries and organisations to come to Ireland to participate in competitions like that and to allow them to compete on the international agenda. Part of our work that is going to bring that to real fruition, of course, will be what's taking place in the National Sports Campus. An extraordinarily exciting agenda led by the National Sports Campus Development Authority, and I've acknowledged many of them that are here. I've had the opportunity to visit the sports campus on a number of different occasions. We've seen great new facilities open in recent years: the National Horse Sports Arena, the Madron Pentathlon Centre, the Diving Training Centre, and the multi-sport synthetic pitch facility. I've had the opportunity to visit 3 of them. When I walked into the National Diving Centre, I was saying to the guys, "Where's the water?" They had to explain to me, of course, you don't need water when you're supporting athletes of that level. But to see everything that was taking place there, to see and go and visit the National Horse Sports Arena, and to see the quality of the campus that's there, and to see the role that can play in supporting all of our equestrian sports, brought home to me the truly multidimensional nature of everything the sports campus is offering. But to go into the Pentathlon Centre and to be informed by my colleagues there that it's the only facility of its kind in Europe that allows all the different codes of the pentathlon to be performed in one centre, brought home to me the success of that centre and also how much is to come. We're going to see further work there. I was very pleased as Minister to be able to get over the line all the funding and work that was needed to make sure that we could sign the contract for the National Indoor Arena. And I look forward to going out with Sean and David and being able to see the early part of the work beginning for that soon. This will be a great facility that's going to offer lots of potential use for many different kinds of sports there. We also have work underway for the High Performance Training Centre, which will be ready for handover to the Institute, I believe, in August. And the centre will be available, of course, to help with all of our athletes in getting ready for Rio 2016. One of the things I'm looking forward to seeing open later on soon will be all of the different pitches that will be open there. The FAI and the GAA will be playing, at the cusp of many of them opening up, and then our friends and colleagues in the GAA soon after that. And when I'm speaking about campuses like that, I also want to acknowledge the equivalent work that's taking place in many different facilities all over the country. I had the opportunity, and I know that represented here are many of our third level institutes. I had the opportunity to visit the Carlow Institute of Technology, see their great sporting campus, and of course an organisation that's very close to my own heart is the Dublin Institute of Technology in Grangegorman. I know they're represented by Sinead McNulty here, able to see the breadth of facility that they have there and the ambition they have to develop that in the coming years, which we're very eager to support. An organisation, of course, which will be playing a lead role in coordinating all of those efforts will be Sports Ireland. All the legislation in relation to that is now passed, brought through to Shannon and Doyle by Michael over the last number of months. Work in relation to that and the transitional arrangements in relation to that are now underway. And I'll be shortly designating the first CEO of Sport Ireland, who will be in place for that body for a transition period of time, and will then play the lead role in making sure that this new organisation is then bedded down and plays the role that I want to see it playing in bringing together all that sport has to offer to our country. The Public Appointment Service will shortly be advertising positions in relation to board roles there, and it really is going to be bringing together and will be a lead role in harnessing all that is great about the organising of sport within our country. It will take on the existing functions of the Council and the Authority, and I'm very confident that it will provide even more impetus and even more momentum to all of the tremendous work that it is underway in relation to the administration of sport in Ireland. What I then want to look at is the various plans and strategies that we're going to be drawn to conclusion this year. The sports sector has played a really important role in the development of the National Physical Activity Plan. 2 weeks ago, I brought it to the Cabinet Subcommittee that oversees and looks after a strategy in this area. We received support for the work that's underway. It's a really important initiative and really important strategy because it sums up very well the cross-cutting strategy of everything that's involved in sport and physical well-being in our country. And I know that many of you played a role in a seminar that took place in relation to the draft plan, where over 60 different bodies came together to look at how that strategy could be put together and to give your input in relation to it. The Irish Sports Monitor, which I mentioned earlier on in my contribution, is looking at very carefully participation levels of sport in our country. This plan, when we publish it later on in the year, I hope after the summer, will have a particular focus on something that I feel very strongly in, which is participation overall, but particularly participation in disadvantaged communities. I think this is a really, really important area. And one of the things that attracted me very strongly to the plan as it's currently formulated is when you're a government minister, what you do is you spend a lot of time sometimes putting together plans to deal with negative consequences or to deal with the absence of things within our society or within our communities. And what I think is so important about this plan is that what it looks to do is harness a positive. Look at things that are already underway and look at how we can amplify them and make them go even further and contribute to vibrant and very strong sporting communities all over our country. We're also going to be publishing a national sports policy. We've just published one recently now in relation to tourism. I've seen the success of that. We're going to be doing the same for sport, to put in place a policy framework for the next decade and to particularly look at issues that are cross-sectoral and to look at how organisations like Sports Ireland, like everything that's taking place in the campus, and like all of the great work that all of you are doing, to look at how we can bed that down in a more strategic framework for our country for the next decade. And I want to conclude then with an example of how this intersects with different parts of my own department and different things that our government is working on. It hooks directly very much now into the economic consequences of sport. We've seen the great success of the Giro d'Italia. We've seen the huge economic benefits that brought to the entire island. We saw last year the great success of the Croke Park Classic. And we're going to be building on that kind of success now in the coming year with the success that the IRFU have already had with the Women's Rugby World Cup. We're going to be launching, well, it's already launched, but we're going to be supporting it very actively now, our bid for the 2023 Rugby World Cup. I'm delighted to see Hugo McNeil, who's present here this afternoon. Hugo did an extraordinary amount of work in scoping out what we would need to do to get one of the largest sporting events of its kind in the world to Ireland. And due to the work that he did, I was able to persuade Cabinet to invest behind it, to make sure that we're ready to land this bid when and if we win it. And due to the collaboration between ourselves and the GAA, we were able to put in place a structure to do it. So I was very pleased this week to be able to announce that the former Taoiseach and Rugby International, Dick Spring, will be chair of the Oversight Board for this bid. The Brian O'Driscoll will be our ambassador. And Hugo has very kindly agreed, and it's very, very valued, to play a lead role then in the board for that bid to make sure that we bring that to Ireland. I'm also very heartened and want to recognise the role of the FAI in Dublin City Council in bringing together a very important group within the UEFA Euro 2020 tournament to Ireland. And I know also that Dunleary Golf Club will be hosting the 39th Curtis Cup match, which will be held in 2016 and which will be highlighting the excellence of golf here in Ireland. So look, what I've done in the moments and minutes that are available to me is I've tried to sketch out areas of progress that we have already made and also areas of progress that we want to deliver. I strongly believe and know that sport brings together all that's really great about our country. Most weekends, despite all the demands that are on my time, I have the opportunity to hop on my bike and cycle around and participate. I want to reassure you, I don't participate in any sporting competitions on my bike, but I go around and see all of the physical exercise that's taking place all across the length and breadth of our city and all the sporting competitions that are taking place in cycling. Every morning I take my daughter to her local gymnastics club where she cartwheels across a gym, enjoying greatly everything that gymnastics has to offer, and it really matters to her along with all of her friends. And then every morning I stand on a different North Side GAA club with my little boy, watching him representing Fina. And it brings together for me the voluntary activity, which is great about sport within our country, the inclusivity that's great about sport in our country, and through all of your efforts, the agenda of excellence, of supporting high-performance athletes to give them the support that they need, but building on the agenda of inclusivity to ensure that sport continues to be at the epicentre of all that's great about our country. I'm confident that it has been over the last year, and the reason I'm going to spend the rest of the day with you is that I'm confident in the years and the decades to come that it will continue to be, and you can be assured of the support of this government in making that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and I'm delighted to say that, as the Minister said, he has kindly agreed to remain with us until later this afternoon, and he'll visit the tables while you're taking part in the workshop. So to the workshop then, a workshop which, by the way, is being sponsored by JLT. For the last 18 months, JLT has been charged with the development and management of the Federation of Irish Sports Group Insurance Scheme. So to Amanda Harton, their Head of Enterprise, thank you for that, and also for the sponsorship. The workshop. Now, as I said earlier, we want to ask for your answers to what we see as a really crucial question. What do we, as a community of sports people, want to say about why sport matters? Why are we doing it? Well, for two really basic reasons. First of all, we will be hearing from Kingsley later on about how to network, and specifically about how to network to build relationships which might lead to support and sponsorship. And as I think we all know, the first question that always comes back when we ask anybody for money or support is, for what? So the clearer the answer is to that question, the better the chance of it getting the desired result. But we also need to be clear because of something we heard last year from Minister Donohoe's predecessor, Minister Varadkar. I don't know how many of you remember, but when he was talking about sport and about the efforts that he was making within government to protect and indeed at that time get reinstated funding for sport, he gave us one reason why arguing the case in Cabinet and in government can sometimes be quite difficult. And reflecting in a way something Mr. Donohoe said just there, Mr. Varadkar said last year that the plain and inconvenient truth is that sport doesn't come up on the doorsteps. Sport doesn't come up on the doorsteps. Now, that is actually what the people in the Federation of Irish Sport see as the challenge that they want you all to help them to grapple with today. We know we're in a run-up to an election, but it's not actually just about an election at all. But we are asking the question, how can we get sport to come up on the doorsteps? As I said, it's not just because there's an election. It is actually much bigger than that. It's just that in an election period, a comment like that actually concentrates the mind, because the phrase, "what comes up on the doorsteps," is a metaphor. It's a metaphor for the areas and issues that people feel are relevant, really, really relevant to their lives. And we're asking, how does sport become that relevant? How does it claim that place, the place that puts it so front and central in people's minds that the political and governmental process begins to increase investment and funding, not just as they do at the moment because they know it's a good thing to do and because we're asking, but because it's being raised by ordinary people, by everybody, by people on the doorsteps. So what we're saying is, what do we need to start saying to the rest of the country as opposed to ourselves, to persuade Irish people who are not involved, who are not passionate, to support us as we strive to put sport front and centre? How do we get through to people to get them to help us do that? That's the question we're posing today. Now, we're not pretending that it's an easy question. There are so many aspects to it. The most basic one, of course, is whether or not there is actually merit in a joint strategy or story at all. After all, there are big differences between sports. Do you all really feel that you have enough in common to want to develop a common story or plea? Perhaps you do, perhaps you don't. We hope you do, but we need to find out whether or how you feel we can make one story which will captivate those who don't know or perhaps who don't care. So it's time to get to work. But just before we do, take a look at this. The Federation's case is that sport contributes to health, to education, to community, to the economy, and to Ireland's reputation abroad. They're fine, noble words, but let's just remind ourselves of what this actually looks like in reality. The Unpussed Cycle series. Could we even begin to measure what events like it are doing for participation and health? It started out catering for fairly serious cyclists, but now it's for everyone, and over 73,000 people have taken part so far. It welcomes kids,
and creaky adults. There are long routes for serious cyclists, and the events have brought cash flowing into local economies. Mothers are flowing and floating around GAA pitches meanwhile, as part of the Gaelic for Mothers and Others initiative. "We want to play too" might be the slogan for this incredibly successful scheme, which has seen mothers waiting for their children ditch the cappuccino and chat in favour of a fun, non-competitive social game of football. The game of volleyball, meanwhile, has been adapted to appeal to our school children. It's offering the education system something different, and it's offering the players a version of volleyball that's easier for younger ones and that increases touches in a game by 100%. GAA clubs, meanwhile, are really doing their bit for the community. Through the Healthy Club initiative, they're offering lots of different programmes, not just to their members, but to everyone. And they're bringing in many new people through their doors and supporting them as they stage community events. Late-night soccer leagues, meanwhile, do their bit for the community too. They encourage at-risk young people to have a game during the prime weekend anti-social hours. Some Gardaí have reported a 49% reduction in call-outs while the games are on, and last year almost 3,000 young people from disadvantaged areas all around the country took part. Sport makes the country money. 163,000 foreign golfers swing through here every year, spending an average of €1,200 each. 150,000 anglers come here too. That contributes $775 million to the economy, and it sustains 10,000 jobs. 100,000 visitors pile into the horse show every year. Overall, Horse Sport Ireland reckons the value of equestrian activities here is $97 million. And as for the big-ticket rugby internationals, the IRFU believes the value of an England Six Nations weekend alone is $50 million, and that's just one match. But win or lose, we Irish love to be loved, and sport helps with that too. Our fans are famous, our team's stars are recognised and admired. That Ryder Cup with an Irish captain and 2 Irish players was watched by 500 million people. Our great cricket performances against India and Pakistan in this year's World Cup were seen by 2.5 billion people. And when the Heineken Cup final was played at the Aviva, it was beamed into homes in 150 countries. So could anybody say anything other than that sport does matter?
It's impressive, isn't it? And by the way, it's anything but exhaustive. We know that many of you here in the room probably have stories to match the ones we just highlighted there, and we are not saying in any way that that was a complete list. It was just a random selection to make the 5 points, points we believe are well worth making. Question is, though, do you agree? So that is our first question. Given that we say sport contributes to health, to education, to community, to the economy, and to Ireland's reputation abroad, what we're asking you right now to discuss in the first session of this workshop is, are those the correct 5 areas? Are 5 areas enough? Should we highlight more areas? Should we highlight fewer? Should there be a hierarchy, perhaps? Should there be a headline one? And should the others pile in afterwards? That's the first question for you. We'd like you please to address that at your tables. Now, the format is you all have green cards for the first question in this workshop, okay? So we want you to discuss that. The 5 areas, are they the right 5? Should there be a 6th or a 7th? Should we stop it at 4? Should we change the emphasis? Should there be a big ticket one that everybody should say, sport is really important because, most of all, and then of course there are the others as well. That's the discussion we want you to have. Responses, please, because the Federation of Irish Sport is going to collate all your responses. Responses to this first question, please, on the green cards. But chat amongst yourselves too, please, because at the end of this 15-20 minute section, we'll go round with the microphone and we'll be asking for your table's response. So both discuss it and write down what you have to say in case we don't make your table. Okay, so we'll give you between 15 and 20 minutes, please, for that first question. Thank you.